Well, Gen 6 Pokemon. Yeah, so Pokemon is, well, an interesting series. It is probably my favorite series of all time. I will always play these games, and getting to talk about these games up on YouTube is always fun. So the question is, what was good about Gen 6 Pokemon? Well, despite what some people will tell you, Gen 6 was not the worst part of Pokemon. Honestly, I kind of call BS for some of these people because it kind of seemed like everyone liked Gen 6. But Gen 6 was a very fun time in Pokemon. We saw some really interesting things happen with the series during this time. And of course, we got what is probably one of the best remakes of all time. Those, of course, being Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. So, of course, my plan today is to talk about the best and worst things about Gen 6 Pokemon and hopefully get some new people into this series. So, let's start with the pros. Well, of course, obviously, probably the best thing about these games was, of course, Mega Evolution. So, X and Y were the first Pokemon games to actually have this feature, and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire did introduce quite a few new Mega Evolutions to the games. These are also the first 3D entries in the games. You could enable 3D with the 3DSs, and honestly, it wasn't the best feature, to be honest, and later games did improve on that, but for what we got, it was pretty nice. Also, another wonderful thing is, of course, the Kalos region. It was fun to explore, and there's some really good Pokemon introduced, such as Meowstic, Aegislash, the starters, the new evolution, and of course Aurorus. Gen 6 had some really it had some of the best Pokemon, and it was always really fun getting to use them. I also really did love some locations in Kalos, Limio City, and forgot some of the routes, but some of the other routes are also very fun to explore. Yeah, Kalos is a beautiful region and probably one of my favorites in the series. We also got trainer customization, which was first for the games. Now, I don't know if the spin-offs had this or anything, but it was nice that the mainline games finally got this. Unfortunately, ORAS can't have that out, but did return and has been in every Pokemon game since 2016's Sun and Moon. Now, this next, we of course have ORAS being remade. Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire were of course remade and re-released in 2014, and in my opinion, are among some of the best remakes. I feel like a lot in these games had improved compared to the original entries, such as timed events and graphics, of course, but just also parts of the story and just Gen 3 experience. In my opinion, is probably the best way to experience the Gen 3 games. We also did get a new storyline with, of course, the Delta episode, which was pretty fun to get to play. And it also made Rayquaza one of the most broken Pokemon in existence. Obviously, next up is, of course, the Fairy type. The Fairy type was introduced with Gen 6, and it kind of had Sylveon as its mascot. Overall, despite not too many Fairy types being introduced with this generation, the type would of course go on to be one of the best types in Pokemon and a personal favorite of mine. Obviously, next up, we of course have, some wonderful characters. Personally, I thought the characters in X and Y, and of course the new characters in the remakes, were pretty fun. They were really interesting and added quite a bit to these games, and it'd be cool to see them return in subsequent games. So next up, we of course do have the re-release of the Gen 1 games. Now, technically, the Gen 1 games are not Gen 6, and I have already done a video and talked about the 3DS re-releases, but considering they were released in the Gen 6 days, I feel like I gotta go over it. As in my opinion, this was a really great business decision by Pokemon, as it gave a new generation the chance to experience these games. I personally hope that they do re-release the Gen 3 and Gen 4 and maybe 5 games just so more people can experience them, because for some reason they never did so. They did Gen 2, but they didn't do these ones, which is unfortunate. Obviously, next up, we of course have Pokemon Amie and of course the 4 Pokedexes. Technically, Kalos does have 3. The other one is just, well, the national dex and such, but having 3 regional Pokedexes in Kalos is pretty cool. And I know Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun Moon did that, but I kind of hate how they did the Island Pokedexes. But next up, we of course have the guns, and that is of course being only 69 Pokemon at launch, and the Mythicals were not interesting. Yeah, Gen 6 has the least amount of Pokemon ever introduced, which honestly made it difficult going through my favorite Pokemon of that generation, hence why there were only 5. With Sword and Shield, that was because I didn't really use too many during my playthroughs. But the Mythicals also kind of sucked, to be honest. They really weren't that interesting. Obviously, there was no 3rd version. This also kind of felt like it aged pretty badly. But yeah, I mean, obviously, we have yet to really know anything about Pokemon ZA. But of course, this generation also felt rushed, and Zygarde felt ignored. Yeah, Zygarde did get something to do in Sun and Moon, but really, it kind of felt like it got rushed. Like, really bad, which kind of sucks, and is probably why these games kind of have the reputation these days. Although I will definitely say people who say these games are too easy need to stop playing with the EXP shirt on. Obviously, we of course have Trevor and Tierno were of course uninteresting. Shauna and Serena were pretty interesting characters. They felt like they actually had something to do in this game. But these 2 guys honestly just kind of felt like they were underused, which is kind of unfortunate. Because on paper, they're interesting characters, but in execution, not really. Obviously, we have the no post game in X and Y, or well, lack of it. Yeah, X and Y kind of have post game, but they didn't really do much. Then, of course, we have the mod spots in OS. Yeah, these were just tedious and BS. Obviously, Megas and Fairy types are kind of broken in this generation. And of course, the trainer sprites were uninteresting. And, oh, so far that's really it. All I got is, of course, the PSS hackers and, of course, Pokemon Bank. Now, I've already done a rant about Pokemon Bank, but Pokemon Bank really only got worse after this generation, so I can't really count that. But the PSS, honestly, this is a feature in Gen 6, and it kind of turned to crap pretty quickly because of all the hacked Pokemon. Obviously, the trainer sprites being uninteresting, well, that's because, well, they literally just use a 2D image, and that's it. It's nothing like the Gen 5 or Gen 7 games. In my opinion, I think Gen 6 has some of the worst looking trainer sprites, which is kind of sad. I really just wish they used models. But of course, next time I'll of course be going through the Gen 7 games and giving my thoughts on them. So stay tuned for those, and of course, thank you all for watching.